On my birthday, my parents didn't bring out a dessert. They presented witnesses. Almost 100 relatives seated neatly watching as my father slid a folder across the table like a contract. Inside was a bill, nearly $4 million for the cost of raising me. My mother silently tore my photos off the wall. My sister grabbed for my car keys and said Dad had already signed them over. Then my boss rose up and fired me on the spot. I didn't weep. I didn't protest. I walked out in silence until I tell you how that silence turned into something they never expected, like. And share me where you're listening from. And if your family ever shatter you like this, your words might help more than you know. My name is Mandy. I'm in my early 30s, and for much of my life, I was the child my family didn't quite know what to do with. I wasn't loud enough to be memorable. I wasn't fragile enough to be shielded. I learned early that in our house, love was quiet, conditional, and often came with strings attached. From the outside, my family looked perfect. Big house, long driveway, holiday dinners that seemed more like photo shoots. Neighbors whispered about how fortunate we were. Inside, everything operated on unspoken rules. My father, Richard, believed money was evidence of worth. My mother, Elaine, believed silence was the equal thing as peace. And my younger sister Lena learned very young that being adored was a skill and she perfected it. Growing up, I was the dependable one, the one who fixed things. When the internet went down before a party, I managed it. When bills piled up or accounts got messy, I calmly sorted them out. I never asked anything. I never asked for recognition. I thought that was what being part of a family required, showing up even when no one noticed. The photos on the wall told another story. Lena's face was everywhere. Graduation, vacations, framed moments sealed in gold. My pictures were fewer, tucked into corners, quietly replaceable. I noticed, but I assured myself it didn't matter. I had my own life, my own path. I covered my own rent. I owned my own car. Independence felt like security. That night, the night of the dinner, I arrived straight from work, still in my jacket, practical shoes. I remember pausing in the entryway, adjusting my bag on my shoulder, listening to the murmur of conversation spill out into the hall. Laughter, glasses tinkling. My name floated through the air once or twice, followed by thin smiles. My mother hardly looked at me when I walked in. She was busy smoothing her dress, making sure everything looked impeccable. My father was clearly in host mode, shaking hands, telling stories. Lena stood at the center of it all, glowingly confident like she belonged there in a way I never quite did. I told myself it was only a birthday dinner, that I was overthinking it. Families get messy. People say the awkward things. I took my seat, folded my hands in my lap, and paused. I didn't know yet that this wasn't a party. It was a trap. Dinner started the way these things always did. Perfectly timed, perfectly arranged. Plates arrived all at once. Wine was poured without anyone requesting. Conversations overlapped just enough to sound friendly, but not enough to feel real. I smiled when someone met my eye. I nodded when an aunt praised the house. Inside, something felt wrong, like a low vibration under the table. Halfway through the main course, my mother stood up. She didn't tap her glass. She didn't make a speech. She walked to the wall behind me where the framed photos hung in a tidy grid. Family trips, holiday mornings. Lena at every milestone, and then without a word, she reached up and lifted one frame off the hook. It was a photo of me. Just me. I was 16, sunburned, laughing at something out of frame. The sound it made when she pulled it down wasn't loud. A faint scrape. Paper against drywall. She set it face down on the sideboard and returned to her seat like nothing had occurred. No one reacted. That's what made it worse. My father cleared his throat. The room quieted, not because he asked for attention, but because he was accustomed to being obeyed. He smiled the way he did when he thought he was being kind. "Amanda," he said, sliding a leather folder across the table toward me. "We've been meaning to talk." It was heavy, too heavy for paper alone. I opened it slowly, aware of every eye in the room. Inside was a single sheet. Itemized, neat, charges, payments, years tallied into one final number, rounded but precise enough to sting. "Just under $250,000 for everything we spent raising you," he continued. "School, food, housing, all of it." My ears rang. Someone laughed softly. I couldn't tell who. "This isn't punishment," he added. "It's responsibility. You're an adult. Adults settle their obligations." I looked up at him. At my mother, who stared at her plate, at my sister, who didn't look surprised at all. "And if you can't," my father said, lowering his voice just enough to sound calm, "then we should probably take some distance. No more contact until this is resolved." That was the moment it clicked. This wasn't about money. It wasn't even about control. It was about removing me and calling it responsibility. Turning love into a ledger. Turning my existence into a failed investment they could finally write off. My hands were steady when I closed the folder. My heart wasn't. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to, because before I could even stand, my sister leaned forward, her fingers already brushing something cool and metallic on the table. And that's when the dinner stopped pretending to be polite. My sister didn't hurry. She never does. Lena has always understood timing better than anyone in that room. Her hand slid across the table, slow and deliberate, until her fingers closed around my car keys. The soft clink of metal was louder than any toast that night. She didn't look at me right away. She turned the key ring once, watching it catch the light, then smiled like she was being kind. "Dad already transferred the title this morning," she said, calm. Almost detached. "You weren't really using it the way the family intended. Anyway." I stared at the keys for half a second longer than necessary. That car wasn't luxury. It wasn't flashy. It was just mine. Or at least I thought it was something I used to get to work to live my life. I realized then how carefully they'd arranged this. Even my independence had been borrowed. Before I could respond, my father gestured toward the far end of the table. "That brings us to the final point," he said like he was wrapping up a meeting. That's when I saw my supervisor standing near the doorway. Mark. He looked like he wanted to fade into the wallpaper. His hands were clasped too tight in front of him, eyes darting anywhere but at me. I didn't know he'd be here, I heard myself think, even though part of me already understood. Mark cleared his throat. "Amanda," he said, voice uncertain. "Based on some concerns that were brought to my attention tonight, we've decided to let you go effective immediately. No paperwork, no office, no warning, just a sentence delivered over dinner like an afterthought." The room stayed silent. 100 people watching to see what I'd do. Waiting for the scene. The tears, the begging. Something they could remember later and feel justified about. But nothing came. I felt hollow for exactly 3 seconds. Then something else settled in. Heavy, solid, certain. I stood up slowly, pushed my chair in, picked up the folder, and slipped it into my bag like it was nothing more than paperwork. I looked at my father. He was smiling, relieved, like he'd finally ended a bad deal. I looked at my mother. She was examining her napkin. I looked at Lena, dangling my keys from one finger, already triumphant. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I didn't say goodbye. I walked out. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes as I crossed the driveway alone. No one followed. No one called my name. By the time I reached the street, the house behind me was already sealing ranks. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just knew I wasn't going back. I didn't go somewhere dramatic after I left. No airport, no friend's couch, no sobbing in a parking lot. I walked 3 miles, more or less, past quiet houses with porch lights on, past sprinklers ticking like clocks, past couples laughing inside kitchens that smelled like dinner and ordinary lives. The longer I walked, the more the shock drained out of my body and left something cooler behind. By the time I reached my apartment, my feet hurt and my hands were calm. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. I dropped my bag on the chair, set the folder on my desk, and opened my laptop. The screen flickered to life. That familiar dark background and blinking cursor. This was the only place that still felt logical. I'm a cybersecurity analyst. My job isn't revenge. It's pattern detection. It's finding what doesn't belong. It's following trails people assume are unseen, and my family had always been awful at hiding their trails. I started small. Old payments I'd helped manage over the years, bills I'd covered briefly, transfers my father had explained away as timing issues or accounting anomalies. At the time, I'd trusted him. Why wouldn't I? He was my father. Families don't audit each other, but systems don't lie. They just wait. Within an hour, the first pattern emerged. Money moving in neat, repeated amounts, not chaotic, not accidental. Monthly transfers from relatives who believed they were investing in something safe, something overseen by Richard because he understood finance. I recognized the names instantly. My Uncle Paul, my Aunt Helen. Good people, careful people, the kind who still mailed birthday cards with handwritten notes. The money didn't go where it was intended. It paused briefly, then moved again, out, always out to an account tied to expenses that had nothing to do with investments. Luxury rentals, designer charges, flights, hotels, lifestyle spending, Lena's lifestyle. My stomach didn't sink. It solidified. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't just favoritism. This wasn't just cruelty. This was something else, something deeper, something with consequences. My phone buzzed on the desk once, then again. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I kept working. I didn't break into anything. I didn't access anything I wasn't legally permitted to see. I only organized what already existed. I compiled timelines, matched amounts, labeled payments and bills the way they actually operated, not the way my father described them. By the time the sun started creeping up through the blinds, the story was finished, and it was ugly. I saved everything, backed it up, took a breath. That's when I finally checked my phone. Dozens of missed calls, messages stacked on top of each other, my mother's number, my father's, Lena's, then Mark's. Mark's message was brief and panicked. He said he needed to talk, that there had been a misunderstanding, that he'd been pressured, that maybe we could work something out. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my contacts and found the number I'd been hoping I wouldn't need. The regional director, the woman who'd approved my last project, the one who'd stayed composed while everyone else panicked during a security incident last year, she answered on the second ring. Amanda, she said, it's late. I know. I said, I won't take long. I was terminated tonight. Not through HR, not through any formal process. It happened at a private family gathering. Silence. And my manager, I continued, based that decision on personal information provided by my parents without verifying anything. The silence deepened, shifted texture. Give me 5 minutes, she said. I made coffee while I waited. Black, bitter, familiar. 4 minutes later, an email arrived. Access restored, termination reversed. Another followed, formal and precise. Mark was being placed on administrative leave, pending review. I was instructed to take a day off and return the following week. I sat down slowly, coffee warming my palms. One pillar gone. The phone buzzed again. This time, I answered. It was my father. Amanda, he said, voice strained. You need to fix this now. I didn't break anything. I said, you sent something. He snapped. People are asking questions. I organized information. I replied, that's all. You have no idea what you've done, he said. I do. I said, I finally do. He appeared at my apartment that afternoon. Not the man from the dinner party. No polished smile, no audience, just a tired, furious man standing too close to my door. Open it, he said. I cracked the door enough to see his face. We did this for the family, he said quickly. For stability, for legacy. You invoiced me, I said, in front of 100 people. That was a lesson, he said. You needed perspective. You used other people's money, I said, and blamed me for existing. His eyes flicked away. Behind him, Lena hovered near the stairs. No confidence now, no glow, just fear. She couldn't quite conceal. This doesn't have to go any further, my father said. We can make it right. Not for you, I said. For them. My phone rang again. This time it was my uncle. He didn't yell. He didn't accuse. He thanked me. You didn't tear the family apart, he said quietly. You showed us where the fractures were. My father heard it. His shoulders sagged like something inside him had finally broken. Please, he said. Just stop. I looked at him. Really looked for the first time without wanting anything back. You taught me that every action has a price. I said, this is yours. I closed the door. The fallout didn't take longer. Accounts were frozen. Questions turned into investigations. Conversations happened without me in the room. The house that once felt untouchable suddenly wasn't. Lena lost everything she'd built on borrowed money. Sponsors vanished. Invitations stopped coming. She tried calling me, then texting, then nothing. My mother sent one message, just one. It said, I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. A week later, I sat at my desk at work. Same chair, same screen, different weight in my chest, lighter, cleaner. I deleted the folder from my laptop. Not because it wasn't important anymore, but because I didn't need to carry it. For the first time in my life, I wasn't managing their chaos. I wasn't paying their bills. I wasn't fixing their systems. I was finished. The consequences didn't arrive with sirens or headlines. They came quietly the way real accountability often does. My uncle and aunt took control of their finances. The payments stopped. Questions were asked. Then more questions. The house that once felt permanent became conditional. Decisions were made without my parents at the center of them. That alone changed everything. Lena vanished from the spotlight first. The trips stopped. The shopping stopped. People who used to orbit her found other places to be. She took a job she'd once joked was beneath her. I didn't celebrate it. I just noticed the silence where entitlement used to live. My father called less and less. When he did, his voice was quieter. No demands, no speeches, just fragments of regret he couldn't quite shape into apologies. My mother sent a single message asking if we could talk someday. I didn't respond, not out of anger, out of clarity. At work, things settled into a new rhythm. My access stayed open. Projects moved forward. Colleagues treated me the same, which was its own kind of relief. I took a day off like I was instructed. I slept, I cooked, I sat with the quiet and let it remain quiet. For days after the dinner, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls stacked up. Voicemails I didn't hear. I turned the phone face down on the table and watched it buzz itself, exhausted. That's when I understood what had really shifted. They no longer controlled the narrative. They no longer controlled me. I wasn't disowned. I was freed. And for the first time, the space around me felt like my own. Here's what I learned. Family isn't the place where you're priced, audited, or threatened into obedience. Love doesn't come with invoices. And silence, when chosen, can be stronger than any argument. If this story hit close to home, if you've ever had to protect your future from the people who were supposed to protect you, share your experience in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. And if you want to hear more stories like this, hit subscribe and stay with me.